I'm here.
All right. All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone joining us and those who will continue to join in. Happy Thursday. Happy 24-hour challenge day in a rain Houston, Texas. Glad to have Kathi Dantley Warren on, our VP for Development Alumni Relations. So we'll get into it with Kathi a little bit before some ground rules. As you know, your mics are muted. I encourage you to participate. We'll look for a nice exchange. So you have a Q&A function on your chat. So put in your questions that we will answer during the duration of the call, or we'll get to them at the end. But please feel free to reach out, and we look forward to having some engagement on that end. With me today, Kathi Dantley Warren, our VP for Development Alumni Relations. Kathi, I appreciate you taking the time on a busy day for all of us, especially yourself, overseeing our units. But for a lot of folks, this might be the first time that they get to hear from you personally. They probably know your name and see you. And so would love to start off with you kind of giving a little bit of your background or your journey to Rice and what's led you to Houston.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for inviting me to participate. I don't know that there's a traditional path to becoming head of an advancement program, but I can imagine that I probably don't have it if there is. I was actually on a track to finish a PhD in cellular and molecular biology. I was a biology undergrad major, I was in grad school at Duke in that program. And then just realized, this is not really what I have a true passion for, but I was excited, and certainly my career was being supported by aid as an undergrad and as a grad student. So I just started to get interested in this world that leads to philanthropic support. Started asking questions, and left my graduate program and ended up in the nonprofit world. And after a short gig with a small nonprofit that was an advocacy organization for women in higher ed, ended up at the University of Maryland in the fundraising office. So I thought eventually I would leave Maryland. I thought I would go back and get a quote unquote real job. Maybe I would go work in a lab somewhere, go work at NIH and just be a bottle washer or support lab tech or something. Totally thought that's what I was going to do. And I said, I'll do this for 3 years or whatever and get it out of my system. And it's been 21 years since I, took that first job at Maryland. Haven't looked back. And here I am. And I'm coming up on a year since I've been VP at Rice.
Well, I can speak on, and so for those joining the call, Kathi Dantley Warren, our VP of Development here. You mentioned at the beginning, you use a Q&A function to send some questions in. We'll start off like all of our calls, a little bit get to know you. So Kathi, kind of give a background a bit. I could speak from my experience kind of overseeing our athletic unit. When Kathi, be able to collaborate with Kathi before her taking the VP job, I was excited that she was elevated to that role because she speaks it. Kathi is an athlete. She's an athlete, and many might not know her direct background. You might look at the middle name and associate some of those who have a basketball or are fans of the sport might associate that middle, that Dantley, and say, hold on. And there is a connection there. So Kathi, if you could just talk about your background with athletics, your passion for sport, and kind of how you, even today, you're still highly engaged with your budding superstar of a son.
Thanks. I love sports. Grew up playing soccer, softball, basketball, and volleyball. And then in high school, my two sports were really volleyball and basketball. And so the Dantley name, yes, I'm Adrian Dantley, the NBA Hall of Famer, is my cousin. And so grew up with that legacy, grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, would be stopped routinely, and asked, is that my dad or my brother, or had someone one day knocked on our door because they saw our name on our mailbox and said, "Does Adrian Dantley live here?" When I was a kid, I swear I think I was 13 or something, and I was like, no, but thanks. So in any case, so sports is in our family. My dad, was an amateur boxer, amateur baseball player, amateur football player. So we just love it, and grew up playing, as I said, through high school. Did not play in college, blew out a knee, just wasn't my thing, but continue to love it. So yeah, I have a son now. He's 14. He's about 6'6" and a solid, 220. Playing for an NBA Hall of Famers AAU team here in Houston. And so love traveling with him, love, getting the exposure, getting the mentorship, the experience. I mean, the thing I love most about his current club is it's really a family. The parents are all in and supportive. And they're really about those life lessons that you learn playing sports. So, that team philosophy, in for one and for all, your responsibility to those around you, being a good sport and playing with honor, all of those things. And, those are lessons that I've carried with me as a professional. Those are lessons I think are imperative in life. And I'm so glad my son is getting them in this context and having a lot of fun doing it and traveling all over the country to do it, meeting, former NBA stars and all that kind of stuff. So I love it. I'm living my dream vicariously through my kid, like any good parent, I guess, should. But his dad too, my husband's really involved and always travels with him. So it's just a lot of fun. So translating that to my work and advancement, I love being an institution like Rice with the breadth of the academic and research initiatives that focus on students and teaching, but then to have it be so committed to the student athlete. So, as taking on the VP role, I've started to try to get a little bit more active. It's hard with my schedule. It's hard with my son's schedule, but I was there at the women's final game. I can't believe that's the last time we were all together in that context. Coming to other game, the women's basketball team. Just seeing the other teams compete and the stellar academics that they also put forward. I think all of that is so critical. And again, it's been a part of what's made me and helped to make me successful. And I fully support that. So yeah, it was exciting to have that be part of my larger purview now that I'm the VP role.
Yeah, it's funny. So right before this call, Coach Langley texted me and she said, make sure you tell Kathi I said hello. And so I got a kick out of that. So hi from Coach Langley. I know you mentioned your schedule, but I think when you do have downtime, if folks are at tutor for a game, they can catch you over there by the baseline, sitting in the stands, fist pumps, a real subtle fist pump. But I remember, when you approached me, like, hey, I'd love to connect with Tina. It was kind of the fan, the kind of the athlete fan, and you were like, hey, I'd love to connect with Tina. I know you guys hit it off, so I found that really funny when she texted me. She's like, hey, make sure you tell Kathi I said hello. So hello.
I appreciate that. I have so much respect for her. I think she's such a rock star, and it's incredible. And yes, I had a total fangirl moment getting to be on the sidelines at the team's practice that day. That was so awesome.
Well, I like what I know the sentiments resonate from her too. Hey, so before we get into my next question, I think the dynamic that you have that's interesting to some is that you're a Duke grad, but you are like diehard Carolina. Like, how does that work?
So yes, and so my mom actually hails from the state of North Carolina, about 30 miles north of Durham. So growing up, she had a fondness for all the teams, but more so for Carolina. I actually grew up more a Georgetown fan because I'm from, the Washington, D.C. area. And then I'm not exactly sure when it happened. My husband and I met in college and he was a big Carolina fan, met in undergrad. And so when I got to Duke, I just had a Carolina bend and, really respected Dean Smith. And, it wasn't even just sort of the Jordan, halo effect. It was all the players that had come out of it, the program. So I have grown into a rabid Carolina fan, and would stand on my porch in Durham, which of course was where Duke is, and along with one of my roommates who was who had graduated from Chapel Hill, we would sing the Carolina fight song at the top of our lungs before games. So I was pretty obnoxious about it. I've toned down moderately, but so it just grew, and I love it. I love it. And my last job, I was actually working at Duke in development. So I not only got my grad degree there, but I went back and worked there as the head of the Cancer Institute's fundraising. But I only ever I've been in Cameron. I've actually played intramural ball when I was grad school in Cameron, but I've never seen a game in Cameron. It's hard to do. But I've been to many, many Carolina games. Love going to the Dean Dome. When they won the championship in 2017, you better believe I took my son. We were down there. It was incredible. It was such a fun day. So yeah, I'm a little bit obnoxious about it, and I have a confession. I have people who have, they come, they've interviewed with me, they've looked up my, like everybody does on LinkedIn, they'll see I'm a Duke grad, and they will make an assumption that I must be a Duke like lover, and they'll say, they'll literally come into the interview. I've had this happen multiple times and say, I love Duke basketball. I think Coach K is just awesome. And I just feel, I'm like, oh, why set yourself up like that? So I promise it doesn't spark any bias per se, but it's just really funny when they make that assumption. So
that is funny. That is, obviously the spring has been, challenging in many fronts. One of the disappointments for me was, I think you were dabbling on the idea of kind of giving some staff leeway for the NCAA tournament, right? Make it kind of a priority to have that on our screens, a bunch of stuff that we were talking about in the background. But it's fun to see your passion for basketball. Who was your favorite athlete growing up?
Growing up, my favorite college basketball athlete was actually Lonzo Mourning. So we were contemporaries. Like I said, I was a huge Georgetown fan. And my brother actually had worked at Georgetown. So it ended up, I would actually go to a lot of their games too. And my whole girls team, we were all huge Hoya fans. We modeled ourselves after them. Our plays were named after the players and I know this is sad that I remember this 30 years later, but they had plays called Hoya and Georgetown and stuff like that, because we told our coach that's what we wanted them to be called. So Zoe was my favorite player, and following him was probably Allen Iverson, who then when I went to, I know I'm giving you more information you probably want, but when I went to college, he was actually in high school down where I went to college.
Yeah.
And then after I got out of school, really, I think one of my favorite players who just retired today is Vince Carter. So, I mean, you can't not love Vince Carter. So Georgetown and Carolina figure pretty prominently in my favorite players. But
so you had a lot of calls in the huddle, of hewing, running the hewing play, just down. Yeah. That's fun. That's fun. Those join the call. I got Kathi, Dantley Warren here, our VP for Development and Alumni Relations. Today is a 24-hour challenge. Great success so far. I think my last total, we were close to 1,000, over 1,000 donors and eclipsed the $400,000 mark in terms of total donations. So great stuff. There's a challenge, $470,000 on the line. I think we'll get there. Seems like we're on a good pace. We should be all right. So very good things. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll get to them here at the end. Want to shift over some pertinent stuff, right? So I had a little fun talking about your background, but now you put the VP role on. You mentioned July will be your 1-year anniversary of being in this chair. Speak on it a little bit. You probably didn't have a crystal ball to anticipate what this year's look like.
Yeah, I mean, who could have thunk that we would have started, this is a fiscal year 20, which starts in July as well, July 1, and ended up with calendar year 20 just being so drastically different. I mean, it's really a tale of two kind of halves of the year almost. But it has been, really exciting, started off really exciting. We have been, since I got here 3 years ago now, we've been preparing to enter a comprehensive fundraising campaign. So we were still in that mode and continue to be in that mode. And so we've just been doing all of the mundane things that, people don't really know happen behind the scenes, increasing our staff and just making sure, our infrastructure, all that kind of stuff is strong. But also for me, a big focus is the culture of our organization. So we've been increasing the size of our team, as I said. And so my focus had also been, dually, that we would make sure that as we're bringing those people on, that we're continuing to promote a positive culture, continuing to inculcate and really take in the best of what they were bringing and making sure that what was already a strong spirit of collaboration and cohesiveness was promoted. But, being really, really deliberate about that. So we weren't just sort of relying on, hey, everybody likes each other and you're going to be great. You're going to come in and, teach you how to do your job and you're just going to excel, but really, doing the harder things that really give a structure to those folks so that they, really understand who we are, what is our mission, what does it mean when we say we're collaborative and creative and you know, have a strong culture and all that kind of stuff, and how can I contribute to it and all that kind of stuff. So we've been doing that, building an understanding of the work across, there's 14 different groups within our division, about 130 people. So making sure that, you know, across those teams, there's not just a fundamental understanding of our mission, which is to increase engagement, raise resources, but, you know, kind of basically spoken, but just a transparency about what we do, how we do it. I have a motto, which is, you know, doing things afraid. And the other thing I say to my team is, in time, you learn to fail better. So really promoting that culture, which is all about, you know, not being afraid to make mistakes, to make smart mistakes, to really innovate. And then that just builds on, you know, an already robust and kind of dynamic environment, but also learning how to collaborate even while you're innovating. So certainly the second half of the year, with the onset of the virus and the economic downturn, has really tested our ability to be innovative and flexible. But it's challenged us to do just that even more. So, you know, the way that we do our work, the way that we communicate, the way that we've had a few staff who've started, about 10 people, including some folks in athletics since we've started. We've had to be, as I said, much more deliberate, much more thoughtful about, you know, how we do our work, how we communicate about what we're doing and continuing to do, how I stay connected to my team, despite the fact that we're physically distant. And so everything from the basic way we do our work to, you know, the broader things that we do to engage our constituents has all changed. But it's been an extremely challenging year, but we have learned a lot. It's definitely made us better. You know, don't take anything away from all the extra effort that this team has put in. Folks like you and me who have kids at home, or doing this with kids at home, all that kind of stuff. You know, doing it without the wonderful energy that comes from being around the great students and the other staff and faculty that we really love, the coaches. You know, so all of that's been challenging, and I certainly don't mean to kind of diminish it at all. So I'm super proud of the team. I'm super proud, you know, that we've made it here to today with the 24-hour challenge, continuing to, you know, do what our mission is to do, and that's to, you know, bring in support for the really, you know, the mission of Rice. And so, you know, so here we are.
Yeah, and so you spoke on it to start. You know, I think when you took the role, I mean, I think your first kind of all staff meeting, you mentioned, you know, not being afraid, right, to take the challenges and to learn how to fail better, which I know resonated with myself and a lot of folks. For people on the call who are just joining, also, you know, Kathi Dantley, our VP for development. You know, in terms of personally, myself, I oversee our athletic fundraising. And Kathi is a right hand for me and our AD Joe Carlgard. And so we value and we collaborate, and Kathi spoke truth to us, and we'd be like, ha, but she's for a place where it resonates and it makes sense. And it's fun to have someone with her knowledge base and kind of her experience in that place to be a sounding board and a great influence for what we're doing. So Kathi, I appreciate you that for you personally for that on my end. So you mentioned the back half of the year, right? It's been challenging. So I want to touch into two things, right? Today is the 24-hour challenge. It's been postponed twice, right? The original scheduled in April, and the virus and the economic downturn postponed it once. And then we recently postponed it again because of the racial injustices and the atmosphere that our Black students here on campus we're going through. So let's speak on first COVID, if you can, just kind of how you've reacted and your responses, you know, the fluidness of everything and how you.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. We literally, you know, paused. I can't even remember the number of events and activities based on COVID immediately, you know, 60 something events. And like I said, we have 130 people that we had to just, you know, pull to go to remote, and just completely changing our game. But, you know, that said, we're in it now, like so many other people working remotely. And what really struck out to me though is first and foremost, Rice's support for its students and the broader Rice community. So just, you know, how they, you know, how we moved remote, how we supported the students who had all different manner of, you know, situations that they were returning to or staying in, you know, because they never came back from spring break. There were a few students who were allowed to stay on campus, and how they supported that. I think there's 200 and some odd students who were still on campus for various reasons, including some folks who were international, just couldn't go back. So what really struck me is how thoughtful and how supportive Rice was for that community, the community of students, but then beyond that, the community of the staff and the faculty, and how they communicated with us and how they talked about, you know, the changes that were occurring, and, you know, so many uncertainties, all of which we're still living with, but, you know, just continuing, you know, to communicate regularly about them, and with that spirit of care and that culture of care that is kind of fundamental to who we say we are at Rice. And then the third pillar, besides, you know, how we treated the community and how we communicate, was really the research activities that did start to bubble up and have occurred since then. So, you know, we launched a COVID-19 research fund, and, you know, Rice is small but mighty, and there's been a number of projects that have been funded as part of that. So the university put in $500,000, and we're raising money to match that. And there's been just a myriad of projects that have occurred. You know, everything from the $300 ventilator that you saw that came out of the Rice 360 Global Public Health group, to a project that was the engineering in the music school, looking at what's the safe distance and the safest way for, you know, vocalists and musicians who play wind instruments, you know, to be able to return to their craft safely. And so it wasn't just, you know, the engineers, the scientists who were coming up with things like rapid testing, which is another project that was funded, but it was, you know, actually I think the second most prominent group of your school represented in terms of the research projects was actually in the humanities. So, you know, just a very diverse group of projects and ideas that came out of that. And I think that's such a kind of testament and a reflection on who Rice is. So that was really exciting. And we continue to support that. Those projects are continuing to go on. And they're, you know, they're having an impact. And those are just the things that are happening amongst Rice faculty, much less, you know, we have folks in our alumni community and our students and others who are doing great things. So, you know, Rice is playing a role, and then that's been really encouraging.
Yeah, and then, you know, fast forward to most recently in June, the most recent rescheduling. You know, we're such a diverse population, and the tragic events in Minneapolis, the tragic passing of George Floyd, resonated very quickly here. And I know you sounded, you know, you heeded advice from our students and from our Black faculty and staff on what the steps we should take in terms of the previously scheduled 24-hour challenge, and how to react, how to respond in support of our Black students here on campus. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, after the murder of George Floyd and the protests and the unrest, you know, we were contemplating whether to hold that second challenge date. And we were approached by the leaders of the colleges and the student associations on behalf of all of our students, asking us to reconsider in light of what's happening. And we were, of course, already thinking about how different the climate was from, you know, the week prior when we were in the final stages of planning. And so I was so proud of how the students approached us, how they engaged us in conversation, because, you know, the series of events, we haven't seen anything like it in a couple of generations in our country, impacted all of us, certainly impacted the Black community, myself, of course, included. The Black students at Rice, we saw the Rice Students for Black Life, who created a fundraiser in the midst of all that raised almost $100,000 for various causes. So all those things, along with the students' outreach to us, asking us to reconsider, we did, and we paused, we postponed it again. But I think the greatest thing, the silver lining out of this, and it's not just about the 24-hour challenge, I think it's, you know, we have retooled the challenge. It's even more inclusive. We're promoting particular funds that will help to impact Black student life at Rice, Black clubs, and the Office of Multicultural Affairs and the Center for African American Studies, a myriad of things. You can all see those online. But I think there's the broader work that Rice is doing, the Task Force on Slavery, Segregation, and Racial Injustice, which had just begun in earnest this past January, but is you know, starting to have programming when we went to remote. And now its work is that much more important and is picking up again. It's going to be more in the public eye. And their charge is to create a plan for documenting the past and also informing and shaping the present. and you know, giving us advice on specific actions to promote and realize diversity and inclusion at Rice. And so this group that includes faculty, staff, alumni, has been meeting, but it's already was intending that it would take, you know, a couple of years for it to do its work, because this is a heavy lift and heavy work. And in the climate in which now they're doing the work, there's that much more of a spotlight on it. And I mean, it's not as if the importance could have needed any more underscoring, but if anything could, this certainly has. And so I think it's going to be it's certainly will be a critical piece in helping, you know, inform how Rice emerges from this challenge and enhances the climate for diversity and inclusiveness, and how it speaks to the future, and how that will shape what is an increasingly diverse student body, as you acknowledged, for many different ways: students of color, international students, you know, all manner of ways you define diversity is increasingly diverse. And so that's different than Rice's founding. You know, how will that shape our future? And these, along with the other challenges that are too heady to get into at the end of our conversation, but just in terms of, you know, how is higher education being shaped differently in light of, you know, a pandemic era? All these things are, you know, they're gonna, this sort of be a new era, I think, that higher education institutions find themselves in. But I think ones like Rice, there are very few like Rice, as stellar as Rice, but we will definitely emerge stronger from this. So it's been a challenging time, but I absolutely believe that, you know, from challenge, you know, emerge usually a you know, better and more resilient and more impactful institutions and people. So I'm encouraged by that.
I agree 100%. And I appreciate your leadership throughout. So it's been encouraging to see you be out front and act swiftly. And for all those, you know, you've made swift decisions that have been the right decisions in aspects for our supporters, but also our students and our faculty and staff on campus. So thank you for that. We'll finish up with one last question. Today is the 24-hour challenge, so we are here. All right. For those who have a major gift, make it today. If you don't make it today, make it by June 30th. You know, with an athletics based on the call here, you know, this is the challenge is more inclusive now than ever, but I know athletics has played a big part of that here the last few years. Can you speak a little bit of the importance of athletics in our overall fundraising efforts for the university?
Yeah, I think it's incredible. I mean, but the challenges that the university has faced because of the pandemic and because of the, you know, the economic downturn, the racial injustice, all those sorts of things, you know, our students in general, but our athletes' trajectories are even more, I think, uncertain. You know, how will they, you know, complete the purpose for which they came to Rice, to be student athletes? How will we return, you know, to a safe environment? What will happen to their financial aid packages in light of, you know, these changes and other things that are happening, you know, that are much more in your purview in terms of how the NCAA and others are responding to this. So now more than ever, it's critical to support things like the OWL Club and the various, you know, teams that are facing these challenges in a different way, you know, that have different challenges in terms of, you know, preserving and supporting their health, you know, on a broader level, all the students at Rice, but athletes, of course, is part of that too. They have different challenges in terms of mental health and wellness and all those kinds of things. So, you know, the irony of all of the challenges that we're facing is they certainly didn't make things easier on campus just because we went remote. They're only that much more challenging. So, you know, we felt, and I felt it was critical to continue with the challenge this year because providing that funding, especially for athletics and also for the broader annual fund, is really critical on a you know, fiscal year basis. Our fiscal year is ending. These are current use funds that go to support very real needs, and you know, we need to continue to have the philanthropic support that allows us to meet these needs year over year. So, you know, we appreciate those folks who are going to you know, step forward during this challenge. We know that this is a very different year and people's situations have changed in many cases, but we do feel that Rice is worthy of asking for this support, and will definitely steward it appropriately, and the students will benefit from it and continue to, you know, have an impact here in our Houston community, but also wherever they return to once they finish their education here. And it will definitely be paid back many times over in terms of their contributions. So we thank y'all and all of you who are listening and responding to the call of the 24-hour challenge this year.
Kathi, Dantley, Warren, thank you so much for joining us here on Between Two Hedges on this Thursday 24-hour challenge. For those, when you go, if we're back on campus in the fall competing, look for Kathi. She'll be there cheering. You'll see her cheering. Kind of leave her be because she gets tense during these games. But
I was hoping you would tell people that.
Oh, you're in it. Like, you're in it. I've looked over some times and been like, Kathy's in the zone right now. For everyone else, hey, have a great Thursday. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay dry. Next Thursday, same time, Bert Emanuel, the Emanuel Rule himself, will join me next Thursday for our calls. I'm excited about that. Everyone be safe. And as always, go Owls.
Go Owls. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, everybody. Bye.